Today's couples love planning their weddings with Zola. That's why it's the fastest growing wedding platform. It's got everything couples need for their entire wedding planning journey, including finding their venue, their planner, and their vendors. And wedding pros love Zola, the sponsor of today's episode, just as much as couples do. And I'll tell you why later in this episode. Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner with The Wedding Biz, a podcast that provides both education and inspiration for those of us in or interested in the weddings and event industry. If you missed last week's episode, well, there wasn't one because of the holiday. However, the week before was a new conversation with the popular designer David Bean. David never disappoints, so be sure to check it out if you missed it. Today's episode is a revisit of my original interview of the one and only multi-talented event designer Preston Bailey. It was one of my early interviews, taped in October of 2017. However, it was so good that I wanted to make it easily available for you now. So enjoy this conversation with Preston Bailey. Preston, I understand you opened your design studio in 1980. You were named as one of the best wedding designers worldwide by Vogue magazine. You've designed events for quite a client roster that includes celebrities, royal families, CEOs, athletes. You've created a number of art installations, which are featured across the world with showcases in New York, Las Vegas, Hong Kong, Jakarta, Taiwan, London. You've been commissioned to do some installations in Macau. You've got a tabletop linen collection, which is, I understand, a collaborative effort with Nuage Designs. And you also support the industry through, your Preston Bailey Protégé program, which I understand is a series of specialized master classes in which you, offer mentorship and education to industry professionals. And if that's not enough, you've authored 7 books, 5 of them bestsellers. Obviously, I know you do speaking engagements, seminars, editorial profiles, television, radio interviews. You are a busy guy.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit more impressive than it really is, actually. Well, when I hear you say it, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, you know what? You've done okay, I would say.
It's not bad. It's been a great journey. And I wish I could say that I opened my business in 1980. I actually started my business back then working for my apartment,
here in New York City.
We're in New York City, yep, and Lexington Avenue. And a very good friend of mine, the interior designer Vicente Wolf, suggested that I do weekly flowers for one of his clients. Huh. And, I was so broke back then and I needed a job. And I said, Vincent, why not? So anyhow, that's how everything started in 1980.
Well, you were from Panama, isn't that right?
Originally from Panama, yes.
What did your parents do?
My father was a carpenter and my mother was a homemaker. Mm-hmm. Nothing about flowers. I mean, I certainly don't have, I wish I could tell you a story and how I grew up and my mother used to love flowers and she had gardens and all of that, but it's really not true.
Well, then what, do you remember what created that first spark for you that got you interested, whether you were 5 or 15? I mean, do you recall, what is it that grabbed your attention?
Hunger. I was hungry. And I say that kiddingly and also serious. I mean, I remember the first time going to the flower market in New York City and being terrified, considering that I had no idea what I was doing.
But what got you to want to even go to the floral market?
Well, I needed to pick up the flowers for my clients, for the weekly clients that I was doing for, that my friend Vicente was suggested. So, I had to go buy them someplace. And the flower market back then was a very intimidating place.
Yeah.
And I remember going one day and literally just freaking out and going back home. It's I can't handle this. But eventually I went back and I started doing, we go into these, wonderful apartments on Park Avenue and Fifth Avenues and I'll put flowers in the living room and the bedroom and, and the clients will come in and, but there was so many errors back then. And, after a while, it's something, I could really get into this. I could really do this. I mean, I think it's a matter of, flowers, you can't go wrong. You can't screw up something that is beautiful. They might die on you, but, and I think it took a while before I truly started appreciating and knowing that I think this is something that I could do for a living.
But this is interesting to me that with Vincent, your friend's suggestion, it's not like you were saying to him, I love flowers. I have this visual sense I'm really fascinated by. It was the other way around, really.
I remember Vicente had a house in the Hamptons, and I was a guest in his house, and I remember coming back and driving in a car with him, and I was just bitching, oh, Vicente, you know, I can't pay my rent. I'm about to get evicted. I don't know what to do. And he said in a moment of brilliance, Preston, listen, you know, one of my clients could use some flowers, weekly flowers. Do you think you could do that? I said, yeah, okay. So, you know, that's the way it happened.
What a moment of synchronicity.
Yes, it was. It certainly was. And, you know, I've always thanked Vicente. Vicente, if you're listening to this, thank you. Because it certainly changed my life in many ways.
Wow. And what would you say is the biggest way? Obviously, introducing you to the idea of that kind of a job. Did he have more influence than that? I know
yes,
he's a
did.
Great architect. He's visually oriented. He's brilliant. Yes. Actually, I want to have him on the show.
He's fantastic. And if you like, I could certainly set that up. But he certainly, whenever I did not know what I was doing, I'll call and listen, you know, what do you do with tulips? They're dying, you know, whatever. And he was always there with advice. And, you know, he's always been very supportive to me. You know, we've been friends for over 40 years right now.
Yeah. So what was the transition then for you doing these weekly flowers to actually starting to go into doing events, going from people's homes to events? How did that happen?
You know, if you look back in 1980, the business was completely different than what it is today. I think back then, you know, you just created a few centerpieces for the tables for a wedding, a bridal bouquet. That was about it. That was before planners came on board.
Yeah.
You know, the planners just started emerging. And then later on, I think it was maybe like 8 or 9 years within, my, you know, being in business, a client said, you know, I want to transform this room. What can I do with this room for it to look different? And I think at that moment, designing started being something that came to life. I really must take credit in the name of event designer. I kind of created that name for myself.
Yeah.
Because again, we were doing events. And, you know, it was not only about doing flowers anymore. You know, we have to drape walls, or we have to hang something on the ceiling, and we had to work with the lighting company.
An environment completely.
Correct.
Completely.
Correct. And that's very much what we have been doing for years and years and years and years and years. You know, and I think, of course, it got very popular as the years went by. But going into a space that people have seen and transforming it into something that it's never been seen before. I think it's kind of a magic. I love that.
Do you recall the details of that first time when you said that client came to you and said, you know, I'd like you to transform this room? I mean, was it terrifying? Or
I remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
And that client was Joan Rivers.
Oh, come on. No, wait, she officiated your wedding, didn't she?
Yes, she did. Many years. 3 years ago. Many years ago. But Joan came in, you know, it was one of those things that she was seeing every single florist in town when Melissa was getting married. Melissa's married. She's got divorced. She's dating again. I hope to get that wedding, Melissa.
Yeah, right.
But Joan said something that I thought was fascinating. She said, listen, Preston, I just came back from Russia. We have a Russian background. I would like to transform the ballroom at the Plaza Hotel to look like a scene from an opera. Have you been to the opera? She said. Do you see when this curtain goes up? That is exactly the excitement that I want the guests to feel, that when they walk in, they said, oh my God, this is just so incredible.
But Preston, this is your first job, is Joan, and that particular...
Well, it's not the first job. Remember, that's many years later.
Yeah.
But she's the one that really gave that concept of transformation, transforming a space into a set.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
very theatrical.
It was very theatrical. And, you know, I think... So it started there, and we did this scene, this winter wonderland that, you know, is sort of I think that image put us on the map in a way. I mean, Joan eventually showed it to Oprah, and I was on the Oprah show, and, you know, everything just started coming to life after that.
How did you approach it though? I mean, again, if you had never done anything on that scale, I am assuming, of course, you did research. Can you take me a little bit through the process of that?
I remember that we had a lot of trees.
Yeah.
And I remember that we spent hours and hours spraying these trees white.
Huh.
And the scale of them was very interesting. I remember that at the Plaza Hotel, you can't really walk in with big trees. So you walk in with a lot of branches and you need to attach them together to make the trees bigger.
Wow.
So, I think like anything else, and I'm not alone when I say this, you kind of make it up as you go along. And I think that's one of the magic of the event world. That we have these ideas, that we meet our clients and they come up with these concepts that seem so undoable. And by sitting down and being a little bit afraid and open and scared, you sort of make it happen,
Huh. Interesting. Can you think of one of the most challenging ones that you went through, but that also I'm sure was the most thrilling for you?
Well, first of all, I think one of the most exciting jobs for me is the one that I'm working on at the moment.
At each moment, yeah.
And the reason why is very simple. We're creating this set that we have never seen before and it has never been done before. And that presents a set of, it's excitement. Is everything is going to go right? Are we going to pull this off? I find that really exciting. And I am not one of those designers that says, everything always goes perfect, because it doesn't. Things get screwed up as you're planning them. And, you just have to be, I think, with a bit of experience, you have to have a backup plan.
But don't you think that's also one of the greatest, what really makes a difference between a truly great designer and one that's really good is how to handle what does screw up in these challenges?
I think it is. And I think a lot of that comes from experience, by the way. And I think I applaud. And as you mentioned earlier, I have the PV Protégé program for new beginners. But one of the things that you cannot learn is how to handle these kind of, pressure and
what you don't expect in the moment.
Correct. And I think with experience, you learn always to have a backup plan. If you're going to build a tree, it could fall apart. How can I avoid it falling apart? And what can I do? It's always thinking ahead that something is not going to work out. And I think that's really the magic of solving problems at an event.
I also remember, Preston, I did one job with you long ago in Newport, and I remember that there was definitely a real calmness about you. And I remember looking about and seeing, and we'll get back into that later too, my impression of what I saw. I mean, it was spectacular, what you had done. But I also noticed that I thought, wow, he's got this calmness about him.
Maybe I was stoned.
This is being recorded.
I know it's being recorded, and I must correct that. I used to do drugs. I haven't since 1990, so that's a good thing. But I think, the person that designed an event and the person that is leading the whatever production is, I think it starts there. If that person brings panic and tension, it's contagious. You want to create this environment of everyone, they're on pins and needle. And I think the calmer the person is, that also trickles down and it creates that environment. And I think it's much more productive than not. In a sense, if I bring panic, nothing is going to get done. So I really try to remember that all the time.
Yeah, I can relate to that. In my music business, in my early years, I was responsible for, music at these parties, pretty big deal. And I used to struggle with that in my early years, is my tenseness. I wear my passion on my sleeve anyways, who I am. And so I also wore my anxiety on my sleeve. And I would find that my groups, my support team, let's just say that it's a good thing that I've changed since then, and yeah, it's a real deliberate effort. I agree with you about experience to be able to maintain this and it's not right. It's not that we're faking it, right? I mean, we got to deal with it. But yeah, I think that's important with managing a team.
Are you still stressed, or are you a calm person?
No, I'm much more calm. I mean, look, there's these moments, right? But I also, I don't know, I get excited. I mean, my attitude about it is that in a way, I don't want to be cheesy with a cliche, but a big challenge to me is an opportunity, right? Because if I can then get some kind of a challenge, and I also, like you, I love to grow. I want to do something different. I want to take the challenge, something bad that happens, and be able to later look back and say, that was a blessing in disguise.
Right.
And that's my attitude. What can I do now to take it to a whole nother level?
Right.
So that I also feel better that I had to go through this shit of some kind of a situation too, So you were talking, for a moment, you were talking about that you had done drugs long ago.
Right.
So you've had a real heavy personal journey. I mean, of course we all have, but that's a pretty heavy thing.
Oh, I mean, again, I thank the event business for helping me getting rid of drugs. And I have to tell you this story. I remember it was 1990, May the 20th, and I was stoned out of my mind. And it was a Friday night. And, I was doing drugs or whatever, the nasty stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't do the good drugs. I did the really bad drugs.
Okay.
Anyhow, to make a long story short, Saturday, I wake up in the morning and, the company was still small. It was me and two other people. And we pick up our flowers and we go to the client's home because it was a wedding in a home. And we arrive and I walk in the door and the client is in panic. She said, Preston, the wedding was on Friday.
What?
I appeared a day later.
Oh, Preston. Oh my God.
Talking about hitting bottom. I mean, she was so devastated.
Oh.
And I really think that was one of the moments that helped me. And I've certainly tried many times before to stop doing drugs or alcohol. And I remember May the 21st, 1990.
That was it for you.
That was it.
Just cold turkey.
Not cold turkey. I was in therapy.
Yeah.
I believe in God. I have, all of the 12-step stuff. I thought that I think is incredibly effective, and that really helped me. And since then, I've certainly created other addictions.
Yeah.
Like working out or whatever.
I was going to say, I don't know your age exactly, but you're looking good.
Thank you.
What?
Yeah,
you're 68?
I know.
Holy moly. You're cut, man.
Yeah, I live at the gym. What can I say? But anyhow, for me, that was a very life-changing moment.
Wow. How do you feel that it affected you moving forward in your work? Because it certainly had to.
I think it has. I think for the first few years, it's not easy to adapt to being sober.
Yeah.
Anyone that is sober would certainly agree with me. And I also think that socially, I became a little bit more of an introvert. Before I was an extrovert with drugs and, let's party.
And I imagine you had to change your whole circle of friends.
All the circle of friends changed. Yeah. And business wise, I think that I started to take my clients more seriously. The way that I presented myself to them was very different than before. I remember having many meetings and being stoned on grass and thought I was being so cool and wonderful.
Oh, right.
And I think by being sober, it helped me really channel that energy that I escape in my creativity and doing my work and being present. Being present, I think, it's been good. It's
more
been
of a laser focus, right? I mean,
yes, definitely.
Well, I want to come back. You were starting to talk about, transforming a room, how it's your favorite part of all of it. And I read somewhere, a quote that you said, entrances are great places to create something dramatic and that gives the mood of what's to come. Can you tell me more about that?
Yes, I think, it's funny because I was reading recently. I can't remember. Actually, I wasn't reading. I was listening to a podcast. I can't remember whose it was. And it was a designer and he was describing what a fashion show is and how they plan it.
Okay.
And the way that they said it is that the first fashions that walk down the runway, it gets your attention. Then there's a moment of lackness. and there's always a show-stopping moment waiting at the end.
Yeah.
I love that because I think that is very much the way that we approach events.
Mm-hmm.
As they walk in, you want something to get their attention. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, this is exciting.
Instead of mood, right?
Absolutely. And I think, people remember that.
Uh-huh.
Either they are very nervous to come to the event, so they walk by and don't see it, or either they will stop and say, oh my God, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
But you have to follow it up. And as you walk in, I always cocktail hour. I usually keep it very low key. Mm-hmm. Everybody's getting to know each other. They're talking.
Starting to drink.
Yeah. But the moment they walk into the ballroom, I really love to have some statement that, they just go like, oh my God.
Just unexpected.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have done dance floor that are floral, that we literally create 2 layers and the entire dance floor itself is floral, or we have done
plexiglass, right? So you can see through. I mean, this table we're sitting at is stunning.
Thank you.
And there's these beautiful flowers. I'm sorry, what are the types of flowers?
Actually, the roses,
white roses,
peonies, exactly.
Yeah, peonies under this glass. Yeah,
orchids. So and one of the things, remember that people are usually at an event or a wedding for 4 or 5 hours. I try to plan some kind of a visual or some kind of a surprise every half an hour. It could be that, there's waiters that are coming out with whatever, something, or it could be something that we spray the room and there's a beautiful scent, or, you have to layer the evening in a way that people do not get bored.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think one of the biggest compliment, and I know that I did my job, is when the guests do not want to leave. They're so happy in this environment because it's beautiful and they feel so at peace. And the end of the evening comes and they don't want to go home.
Sure.
Then I know I nailed it.
In my business in music, it seems it's easier in a sense, in my opinion, to be able to have something, because I want to have something every 15, 20 minutes happen and take them on this journey, right? It's creating an experience. And like you say, there's the beginning, the middle, the end. And at the end, same as you, I want them to just say, oh, come on, it's over. I love the surprise on their face when they don't even realize 4 hours have gone by, and it's like, oh my God, it's over. Why is Zola the fastest growing wedding platform? Because Zola does things differently. They've created a subscription-free platform that works for wedding professionals with free listings tailored to what you do that makes your business look great. And there are no paid placements or stacked search results. They are all validated leads. Zola will match you with pre-qualified couples who they know are a good fit for your style and fee structure. If you want to connect, it's easy. And there are no annual fees or commitment. Just pay for the leads you are interested in at a price that's fair. You're in control. Then there's Zola's excellent customer support, ready to answer any question and help in any way. They'll even create your free listing for you. So grow your business with the wedding platform that's proud to do things differently. Go to zola.com/Andy. That's ZOLA.com/Andy to start your free listing and even make your first connections for free. Visually, though, I wonder more. And again, obviously I've been to an enormous amount of events. I was at yours. I know, lighting can change. What else visually, though? You're talking about design. What are some of the things you personally have loved that you've done to make that change visually every half hour?
Yeah. Remember, if you could think of a room or a ballroom as a canvas, I remember that you have the floor. Mm-hmm. You have the walls, you have the ceiling, and you have a stage.
Okay.
So if you do these statements on the wall and you could conceal them, let's say these statements are done out of flowers or whatever, whenever the bride walk in, you could just drop a very kabuki thing, and all of a sudden these walls appear and they all layer with different sculptures of flowers or something like that.
Yeah.
Then later on, as you said, some kind of a lighting happen. You could do the same thing with the stage. The band is playing and everything is cool, and before you know it, we unveil something at the back of the stage that is visually, it's like, oh my God, did you see that? I didn't see that before. So, there are many different places that you could certainly plan and organize it visually. we have had statements on the ceiling that at certain time of the night, they will sort of come down and they emerge, very Phantom of the Opera kind of a thing that it sort of comes down. So, that kind of theater-like environment is what really make it exciting. That at the moment they're more, you have to plan it carefully and you have to do it so well with the music, which you will understand, what's going to happen when with the planner in order to make it come to life.
It's interesting when you're talking about this and your quote about the entrance. I love going to concerts, and I'm always, I want to just experience it not through my phone. I have my own judgment of that. But at the beginning of every show, like last night, I happened to see, 2 nights ago, I saw U2. Now, I personally, I don't necessarily listen to every record all the time, but I knew they have been together. I mean, talk about experience, right? 40 years. They've been playing stadiums for 30 something years. They fill the stadiums. They haven't had a hit on the radio in many, many years. And they also have the resources. So I'm thinking, okay, they got the resources. What are they going to do? And so I, as soon as the lights went down, I picked up my phone and turned it on. And I do this at every concert because I know the entrance. What are they going to do? Correct. And it was interesting in their particular case, rather than this big explosive entrance, like most music, instead, they were out on this small stage that was kind of out into the crowd, and it was very bare. The lighting was very basic. And then they built up to where eventually, but they started with a big song. Okay. So that was the explosive entrance in a Suddy Blende Sunday. Huge song. Each band member was coming down the walkway as they're playing their instrument, right? I'm getting goosebumps. They started it, but still it was overall visually more low key. Then after a certain period of time, they started to all go up the walkway to the big stage. And I've never seen anything like this. It was a screen, the entire width of the stadium, huge screen, the best resolution I've ever seen. And visually it was, I don't know how to describe it. Stunning. I mean, they had their own images, sometimes black and white, sometimes with effects on it. And then they would also have various other images, whether it would be, they were doing a song and there were Native American Indians on the side. There was a song where they had different regular kind of people, each of them putting up a helmet on their head and they were making a statement. But there was such a visual element to it. And it was also video. Do you think that someday or already have you incorporated video element in addition to flowers and fabrics and colors? And I mean,
absolutely. And, I wish I could say that I'm the only one that is doing that, but not at all. I mean, everyone is using video as a medium. We have done ballrooms that, there are screens all around it and all night the images keep changing. We had done an event where in the ceiling, instead of hanging anything, I hung the canvas, and throughout the evening there was projections of stars or projections, video mapping. Video mapping is
on and on certain fabrics, I imagine.
It's very popular right now. And, video walls is very popular. One of the great things about events is that we get to test a lot of the new technologies that are happening in other, like, as you said, in concerts. You're right. I mean, I go to concerts not only to listen to the singers, but for what's going to happen.
And for you to get ideas right and see what they're doing today.
Absolutely. I followed Madonna, by the way, for years.
Talk about someone who reinvents themselves.
Forget about reinventing herself. Her sets are to die for. And every single time that I go to one of her concerts, it's like, what is she going to do now? And as you were saying, with this group, it just blows you away. That's what events should do visually. Great. You got great music, which is another way of creating a layer. You have incredible food, and there are amazing caterers around. You have the drama of the cake that comes out. Again, beautiful
Another
cake.
Moment.
There is no reason why us as designers, and clearly my thing is flowers, of course. I mean, again, doing it with flowers is like a win-win situation. But to create that, drama that you were just talking about at the concert, if there is a way to bring it to an event, is a win-win situation.
And I imagine even with a cake, it's interesting. I'm thinking back to all the weddings I've done. I mean, over 900 literally. And even with the high-end luxe ones, which is, all I'm doing the past few years, I don't necessarily see anything around it's always a table, but it's very plain. I imagine you probably take this to a whole nother level, right? With even how the cake is presented.
And
or do you want to let the cake just show for itself and have a very bare backdrop? How do you look at that?
It really depends. And in all fairness to the cake makers of the world, it's not a lot of clients that want to pay for that extraordinary, fabulous, because, Sylvia Weinstock, which I think you mentioned,
she's on my show.
that you interviewed her, Ron Ben Israel is another brilliant cake maker. It's not often clients really want to go for it. I have done a few royal weddings. And there the cake and the dessert is such a big story.
Yeah, it's a huge moment.
Absolutely. And it really depends on the country. I've worked in South America, in Brazil. The dessert station is a huge thing, and the cakes, usually there's not one cake. There's 20 different cakes.
Oh, interesting.
So, it really depends on the culture. It depends also on the client and how much they want to spend. But, I designed a cake for a royal wedding. I think it was 2 years ago. One of the apartments that we have in New York City, in the lobby, there's this gigantic chandelier on the floor. Amazing, big. I'm talking about it's probably like 20 feet big.
And it's on the floor.
On the floor, right. So it's like a big sculpture. And I remember taking a picture of it and showing it to my client, and we duplicated it as a cake. And it was really such a oh my God, everybody that walked in, you can imagine that chandelier it's like a 20 by 20 size.
Oh my gosh.
But lots of miniature cakes and layers, and we added crystals to it. So, it really depends on this culture. It depends on the client. If they want to spend the money for this one, because usually they exhibit it all night, but after it's cut, that's it.
Yeah. Well, what is your process like in terms of different cultures you're working all over the world. You're doing very high profile events. How do you personally handle going to a country that you're not real familiar with the culture? I'd be a bit overwhelmed.
It's overwhelming, and I've learned to be very non-judgmental.
Yeah.
And accept people and the culture for what they are. We've certainly worked in India, New Delhi, which, as far as I'm concerned, nowhere in the world does weddings like they do in India.
Yeah.
There's days and days of events. They build cities. I mean, the one that we did is like an entire empty park that we filled up.
Oh my God.
One of the most amazing thing that we did, we copied 6 of the most famous restaurants at New Delhi for this wedding, that each guest could go in and basically order whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
So, this is an entire different level. I mean, this doesn't happen in America, but I think it's a matter of really doing research and learning about what they're used to. We can't really apply even though everyone is looking at what we're doing in America, but you have to sort of put that aside.
And kind of start from scratch, right?
Absolutely. And learn about the culture, what weddings mean for them. In the Middle East, all of the weddings are only women. Culturally is the one event, they don't necessarily have dance clubs and everything else. So it's the one event that these ladies get to come and show off the beautiful outfit, that they don't have to be covered.
Yeah.
So it's like an entire big deal.
Wow.
That if I was to do a wedding in Indonesia, which, it's a different culture.
I imagine you must love these opportunities to completely different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's good to go in with how should I say, with no expectations. Yeah. And see where it leads you.
So, in terms of weddings in America, what is your process with a bride and groom? Can you take me through that?
Absolutely. Usually we get a call, and the client comes in, we have that initial meeting that, I'm there.
Yeah.
And I turn off all of my phones and everything else. Right. I really want to sit there and get into the client's head. You really have to like forget who you are. I'm not Preston Bailey. And if I happen to love red, that's not about me. It's about them.
Right.
And really try to like inhabit their sensitivity. So then after that meeting, if they leave and if they feel that they want to move forward ahead, we usually ask them for a deposit to save the date. Sometimes we get a little bit booked. So ask them for retainer.
Yeah, Preston, do you mind if just for a moment?
Sure.
So when you're sitting with them, what are those conversations like? Do you have a certain set of generalized questions? Like, how does that go? You know, cause for you to also know, okay, this is what we're going to deal with. I'm starting to get a vision. What happens in that meeting?
I think it's a matter of paying attention. And I pay attention to everything. I look at what they're wearing. I look at their bag. I start asking questions about their taste. Sometimes I like to go to their homes because you learn a lot about people in the environment. And, you know, it helps me. Yeah. Remember that each client is completely different. As a matter of, you know, general questions. What colors do you like? One of the biggest questions that I always ask is, what do you hate? Give me a list of all of the things that you do not like, that you have been to an event, that you find annoying, that you don't like, you know, so you really want to be able to give them the flexibility to express themselves and listen to them.
I see.
I don't have to be dropping names and I don't have to be talking about me. They're here to tell me a story. And that story is, you know, this is who I'm about and what can you do for me? You know, I come very much from a place of service. What can you do for whatever vision I have to make it work?
I see.
So after we're hired, then the fun begins. I usually set up 2 different presentations. Presentations is something in where you're going to tell the clients exactly what they're getting. The first presentation is done with all renderings. And I'm one of those designers that love to design. So usually I will come up with 3 different concepts. And that have worked very well for me because again, if you have one concept, you could go wrong. Yeah. If you have 3 concepts
I got it.
And you go wrong, there's something wrong with you.
Okay.
So usually we give them 3 concepts. I see the reactions and these are very detailed drawings. And depending on what they like, then we will go to presentation number 2, that if we have to create tables, samples, or if they have to create small models of whatever the tent is going to look like or whatever, the lighting, we give them a lot more information at that point. Okay. At that moment, we also give them an estimate or a bill in what everything is going to cost, which I don't do that. I learned years ago that, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I would want to give everything away.
Well, also it keeps the relationship very pure, doesn't it? Between you and your client.
It does.
Not getting into the business. You're the creative guy, period.
Correct. It really does. And, you know, then there's a negotiation process. You know, you go back and forth. Yes.
Which I imagine again is someone from your team, not
dealing with it. Absolutely. Yeah. And once that's approved, we ask them for half of the total of the job. We start production. You know, I have a floral. I'm one of the few companies that still does their flowers. And I have a production company and staff. We hand the job to them. It goes into production. And 2 weeks before the event, I ask the client for the other balance. So, you know, the idea, and I'm very strict about that, is that it has to be paid in full because remember, we have already done the job and everything else 2 weeks before. Yeah. We bought everything.
And we don't want them to have some strange after the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. Once that's said, I've always been very fair if something goes wrong to credit my client. Remember that you want that client for life. You don't want them walking away saying, you know, we paid all that money and they had us pay up front and we didn't have any power after they screwed it up. Yes. So I think it's important that even if you collect the money, that you are fair enough that if something goes wrong, either speak to your client, give them credit, try to settle it somehow for them to walk away feeling that they were not taking advantage of.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, also in order to execute your design for these events, you clearly have to be managing a team, you know, who can handle all this and represent you and your brand. Can you say something about, the business side. Do you enjoy the business side, in terms of managing it, setting up that team?
You see, I have 2 jobs in my company.
Yeah.
And the 2 jobs is one, as a designer, and secondly, as a salesperson. I'm the one that is going to sell the client whatever they need to do. Besides from that, I have people that do everything else. Do I enjoy the business part?
Yeah.
I didn't used to, but I think for anyone that is in the business, you need to pay attention and you need to learn and you need to be very much aware of what's happening under your nose. God knows I've made a lot of mistakes in that area. And I've learned that if you avoid that portion, eventually you're going to suffer. And there's no secret that I've made many fortunes and I've also lost many fortunes in the event business.
Oh boy.
I really have. I mean, after being in business for this long, it's been a journey of 37 years. So you can imagine with the recessions and everything else.
Yeah.
So it's always been an up and down and up and down and up and down.
And it'll continue, right?
Of course, hopefully, but I think it's important that as a business person that you not only aware of the artistic and the fun part, but be very much aware in what's going on business-wise.
And embrace it. And like you're saying, actually find something about it to enjoy, right?
I don't know. I still don't enjoy it.
These are selfish questions for me. I want to hear.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that I do that I still don't enjoy. Yeah. But I have to do them anyway.
Yeah.
Because again, the fun part, as I said, is seeing the event come to life and, have the client being happy and, you feel acknowledged and validated.
Yeah.
I think that's all the great part.
Well, obviously you are doing a good job with business. What about, one of the last topics before we close? I'd like to know about balancing your personal life with business life. How do you feel about that?
It's not easy. It's not easy, especially myself that, I travel a lot. I'm away a lot throughout the year. I just got married 3 years ago. And my partner, Theo Blackman, happens to be a jazz singer.
Yeah. And he Grammy nominated. He's a composer too. So he's traveling.
He's very talented. Yeah. I love the man dearly. And he travels a lot also.
Yeah.
So, for us to find that time for us to connect.
Wow.
It tends to be a little bit more, lonely a little bit, but whenever the good news is like it's been one long honeymoon because every time we meet, it's like, oh my God, I remember who you were. You were fantastic. I love you to death. And then goodbye for the next 2 weeks.
Is that your rule, a 2-week kind of rule, or do you have any rule? How do you do this?
Again, it all depends on his schedule and mine.
Yeah.
So we always try to connect either when we're traveling or if he has a concert. He has performed in Carnegie Hall. He has performed in Lincoln Center.
Wow.
Whenever he has something important,
you're going to come in for
that
those.
I'm there. Absolutely.
Yeah. What about the rest of your personal life? Time for yourself? I mean, you're, like you say, you're traveling a ton. The scope and scale of these events you're doing is just mind boggling. Do you work out? You said you kind of manifested your addiction through working out or that addictive quality.
Yeah, I do. I usually my schedule is simple. I get up at 4:30 in the morning.
Come on, 4:30.
Yeah, I usually work out for a couple of hours.
A couple. Okay.
And then I write, create my journals, then half an hour answering emails that I come.
Wait, what are your journals about? Can I stop for a second? Are you just like a diary or like ideas, visions, dreams? What is it?
Yeah. Years ago, I read a book by the Artist's Way.
Julia Cameron. Man, me too.
Didn't that change your life?
Oh my God. If everybody should check out, artists or non-artists, the morning pages. At a minimum, the morning pages.
And that's exactly what I've been doing for years. I read it when I turned 40. So that's almost, I'm 68 years old now.
Yeah. And you do it religiously every morning?
You have to.
Preston, I did it for like 2 years. I stopped. I went back.
I know, but go back to it. And I have to, by the way. Sometimes I'll stop if I'm traveling for 2 or 3 days. I don't do it. But when I come back, I continue. Yeah. But it really changes your life. You have a place in the morning that you could bitch and complain and just put it all down on paper. And come up with great ideas. You know, it's really life changing.
I'll put a link to, rather than us describing the details here, I'll put a link to it in the show notes so people can get it themselves and hear it from the author. But yeah, that's really interesting. You know what? You're inspiring
you had it too. That's really great.
I did it. Well, for a long time, I was doing songwriting. I'm in the middle of the music business, and I was going back and forth to Nashville because that's where all the great songwriters, it wasn't just country, but that's where the great songwriters were.
Now, are they still?
And now and then, where the artists appreciate the writers versus the producer, the artist having to do all the writing. It's two different skills. So in Nashville, especially in the 90s, it was very much appreciated, these professional songwriters. So I actually I even had a publishing deal offer. I didn't do it, but I was deep into songwriting. And so I learned about the artist's way. All the hit writers were doing that book. And you're right. It changed my life in terms of a method. I mean, look, there's therapy, there's meditation, there's yoga, and I do a lot of all of that. However, that workbook in the morning pages, you know, within a few minutes, you get into your subconscious, your unconscious, and it reveals things, right?
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. Boy, you really got me going. Now I'm doing transcendental meditation. Now I got to add another half hour to my morning. Thanks to you.
What is your morning like?
Getting up at 4:32. I usually get up around 6, quarter to 6, which I love. And that was new to me, but I have a 2.5 hour, morning because
ritual.
Yeah. I mean, I think we have to do that, right? The transcendental meditation. I also work out or run every morning, have a relaxed breakfast, all of that. I like to listen to a podcast. So your morning ritual, you get up at 4:30. I interrupted you, but I had to get into it. You get up at 4:30. Do you start right away with the morning pages?
No, usually I work out first.
Oh, you do? Okay.
And clearly I love doing cardio. I do all kind of like yourself. I run, I swim, rowing has become one of my favorite exercise to do. And I think it's amazing the great ideas that comes up while you're
in that morning.
You know, you're running. I've gotten my best
I have to
ideas
stop all
running.
the time and write these damn ideas down.
You have your phone recording as you're running.
That's good
that's
point.
very effective, by the way.
Okay, so that's your way. I'll do that.
So usually I finish that and then I do the morning papers. I do meditate for 22 minutes.
Is it TM or something else?
I have a person that walks me through, I can't think of the name of the person that walks me through a meditation, and I find that easier to do.
Is it a recording?
It's a recording.
Okay.
So for 22 minutes, relax and, they sort of walk you through your breath, and then there's a quiet moment for whatever 10 minutes of the 22 minutes.
Yeah.
And after that, and of course I answer email and I come to work around 9:30 and work for the rest of the day until 7:30.
When do you go to sleep?
I'm an early 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
My life is really boring. It really is. It really, I usually get home, and the one day, and another addiction that I have that I indulge in it greatly on Sunday is Netflix.
Oh, yeah? What on Netflix?
Binging everything that is
TV series or movies, whatever, all of it?
Usually they have programs that have like one episode after the other.
Yeah.
And
I watch a whole season at one time.
I saw Love recently that I thought, and I love seeing the production, and I love I'm fascinating of the writing, and there's really a lot of great TV out there.
Yeah, there is.
And I'm fascinated by it. I mean, it's like an entire world that didn't used to happen before. So anyhow, usually that's my Sunday of just relaxation and doing nothing. My husband is in town. We do it together.
Oh, wonderful. Wow. So what's next for you? Do you even think about the future? Like, what are you thinking for what's next?
I'm not one of those people that plan, like I have 5. First of all, I'm 68. It's not as much. I mean, hopefully I'll be around, God knows, a bit longer. But I'm really open for the opportunities, and I've been very fortunate, like the art installations that we have done. Yeah. Mr. Wynn, that, is amazing. He, from the Wynn Hotels, he certainly adapted me, and we have done many of those installations that I've really. And I love doing these public installations. The reason why is not like events that only a group of people see it.
Yeah.
These installations are up sometimes for 3 months. The one in Las Vegas right now has been up for 2 years.
And anyone can see it, basically.
Anyone can come and see it. Yeah. And it's mostly floral. 100% floral.
Wow.
A lot of them are frozen flowers, but I love doing that. And what you discussed earlier, I would love to design a concert. That's my ultimate.
Listen,
let's
get together on this.
Believe me.
Who are some of your favorite artists? Who would you love to do? Listen, this might be heard by God knows who.
Right.
Who would you love to design this set design for?
Can I be really corny and send Madonna?
It's not corny.
And the reason why is because, I've been to other concerts and I have seen you too. I've been to, whenever there's something at Madison Square Garden that I think that is going to have set, I'm there.
Regardless of whether you technically like it. Personally, you'll go, right? Yeah.
Unfortunately, by the way, lately, a lot of people are not doing sets. But there are certain people like you two that you just mentioned, or Madonna, or Christina Aguilera. I mean, she does the most amazing video work, and it just builds, so any of those will be great to do something for them.
I saw a year ago Ed Sheeran,
right?
And he's by himself when he performs, and he was performing. Yeah, oh my God! But he was performing in a major venue, huge. And I thought to myself, what is he gonna do? Because it's also, distance, right? You got this major venue. Right. It's not an intimate place. What are people going to look at when he's just a dot down in the end? Right. He had, or whoever he's working with, massive, again, video screens behind him, huge. Right. And I can't verbally describe it, but I was knocked out by the work behind him, the screen, while he was singing and doing his brilliant thing. Yeah. It was stunning.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I mean, Beyonce, I saw her.
Ooh. I need to see her.
She does great stuff.
I mean, the whole thing's theater.
Absolutely.
She's a great singer, but it's theater.
It's theater all the way. I think way back, sort of Michael Jackson's at that time.
I saw him twice. I hate to tell you, but I did. Yep.
That started, I think he sort of started getting
I believe he absolutely did. Yeah.
And then it kept going bigger and better. And I have books in sets designed for concerts.
Do you?
Yeah.
I would love to get hold of those.
Yes. That I've seen through like the history of them and how they came about.
Did you see This Is It, the movie, Michael Jackson, before he died, the rehearsals of what he was working on? Yeah, I saw it like 7 times.
It's amazing. I saw it once in a flight. It's like, oh my God, this is like the best movie ever.
Yeah.
To see him and his element and how the process happened was amazing.
Well, Preston, what a blast, man. This was great.
Great talking to you.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Preston Bailey. Be sure to check out his website of PrestonBailey.com. You can find him on social media, on Instagram and Facebook at Preston Bailey. And be sure to check out the show notes with event pics that our guests provided in your cell phone's podcast app or at our website of theweddingbiz.com. And remember to go to zola.com/Andy to create your free listing and get your first few connections for free. And also know that Preston Bailey has his own podcast. He put out 2 seasons, and it was called Stop and Smell the Roses. You can find it at theweddingbiznetwork.com or by the show name on your cell phone's podcast app. That's Stop and Smell the Roses. And next week's guest is a new interview. It is actually a panel with Jose Villa, Lori Ahrens, and Carrie Goldberg about creating beautiful photos for your clients and for your own marketing purposes. And finally, be sure to follow us on Instagram at The Wedding Biz, and we'll catch you next week.